This week, it is go time, and that's because we're having the full moon in Aries this week. And this full moon, being in Aries, is ruled over by Mars. Mars is in Scorpio, and why this is important is because of all of 2025, Mars has been debilitated. It was retrograde in Cancer, then it was just in Cancer. Then it went to Leo. It was still in shadow. That was a little bit okay. When Mars was in Virgo, it was with the South Node. That wasn't really all that good. And then Mars was in Libra, which had its problems. But now that Mars is really dignified, the planet of energy, drive, and action, our energy, our action, our ability to take action, our drive is a lot stronger. Now this full moon, the full moon is about realizing things. It's about highlighting things, is in Aries. It's all about energy and drive. Now that Saturn's not in Aries, a lot of this becomes easier. And so we start this week off on Monday with the full moon in Aries. And also this week, we have Mercury going into Scorpio, where our minds are going to get way more fixated, way more focused, maybe a little bit tunnel vision. So we have to be a little bit careful. But then also this week, we have Venus and Virgo making a sextile to Jupiter, which is great. But then Venus and Virgo makes an opposition to Saturn and Pisces. This is going to be really important this week. I'm not going to explain all about that in this week's horoscope, so let's go ahead and get started talking about it. Welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for October 6th through October 12th. My name is Cam White, if you don't know me already. And I like telling you what is going on in the astrology and how to use it to your advantage, which leads me to, if you are looking to actually start using astrology to plan your life out and do the same exact techniques and do the exact same way that I do with my clients that I've helped with over 2,000 people, I'm relaunching my Plan Your Life with Astrology workshop. It is a 6-hour workshop where I teach you all about annual perfections, zodiacal releasing, solar return charts, secondary progression charts, and even Fradaria in a crash course. But more importantly, I teach you how to implement it into your life so that you can look at your own astrology and you can start planning from there. But the reason I'm relaunching it is because on Sunday, October 26th, I'm going to do another live event with it where I'm going to be going over your guys' birth charts. And if you have questions, if you want more details, if you want more answers about what is going on in your timing, what is going on with your transits, I'm going to be here to walk you through that. If you've already gotten the life planning with astrology course, you're going to have access to this, of course, so don't worry about it. But I really want to get some people on board with this because 2026 has so much good going on, so much change. And it's this time right now in October where we start to build that momentum for 2026. So again, if you want to have a crash course in learning all of the ancient timing techniques that I apply with all my clients that produces all of the results of being able to make predictions time and time again, this is going to be the masterclass workshop for you. It is 6 hours long. And then we're going to be going live on Sunday, October 26th. Where I'm going to be helping you guys go over the next years of transits and being able to understand it for you in your chart. And of course, one of the best things about astrology is you may not have questions about your chart, but when you see other people's questions and you see other people's charts, it's going to make those gears turn in your head and you're going to start to understand it a lot better. And so if you're tired of astrology being confusing and you want to actually use it to plan your life, this is for you. We're going to be going live on Sunday, October 26th. Make sure you join us, sign up for the workshop. The link will be in the description as well as the pinned comment below. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the astrology. So like I said, Monday, we really have the moon going into Aries super late Sunday night. When it goes into Aries, it'll conjoin Neptune, it'll sextile Uranus, sextile Pluto, that whole thing. But when we wake up on Monday, the moon's just going to be in Aries, but the full moon doesn't really happen till later on in the night. You're going to have this very rambunctious, emotional, like charged up energy. And what's interesting is the sun is in Libra, right? Our willpower is a lot more weak right now when the sun has fallen in Libra. And oftentimes when the sun's in Libra, it's more dependent on other people to get that willpower, to get that sort of excitement and spirit energy. But the moon is our emotions in our body, and it is literally being lit up in the sign of Aries, the sign of like initiating, starting, attacking. And again, if we look at Mars, Mars is in Scorpio. So Mars is action, energy, drive. It is also fights and conflicts. So that planet is really, really strong right now. And of course, in the October rising sign horoscopes, I went over like where that all is. And if you're interested in getting a little bit more detail about that, go there. But the reason I'm saying this is with Mars in Scorpio, Mars is going to be dignified for a little while. Mars will go into Sagittarius in, I think, the end of October, beginning of November. It's the beginning of November. That will be good. Then around December, Mars goes into Capricorn, and then that'll be through all of January. By the end of January into February, Mars will go into Aquarius. We have so much strength with Mars coming up here in the next few months. With this full moon highlighting Mars, this is your go signal. This is the time to take some action. We just got off the Venus South Node conjunction. You were grossed out. You were disgusted. It's time to move away from that stuff. Now that you've cleansed all that stuff out, now it's time to get very clear and driven about what is next for you. Mars in Scorpio. Scorpio is about like pulsating. Think about how blood moves in your body. Blood stays in your body. Well, hopefully it stays in your body I get it, women and that whole thing, that's a different story, but just bear with me with the analogy here. Blood stays in your body. Scorpio is a fixed sign where if it's a water sign, it kind of stays in one place, right? And that blood pulsates and it creates energy and it creates life force in you. That's what Mars in Scorpio is about. It's about that blood pulsing and having like your veins dilated and your arteries dilated where that blood flow can increase and you can have more of that energy and it can just like go throughout your whole body. That's what we're looking at here on Monday. With that being said, Mercury also goes into Scorpio on Monday. So there's a good and a bad to this. In my opinion, I've been looking much more at Mercury as a malefic. I say that with an asterisk. And the reason being is Mercury is the trickster. And it's really easy to think that at certain times you're doing the more rational thing, but you're really just getting caught up in mental gymnastics. But Mercury is about the way that we communicate, the way that we think. And while it's in Scorpio, it's fixated. It is tunnel vision. There is this mental focus on one thing in your life. Again, look at what house Scorpio occupies in your chart, and you will get a lot more information about what the next few weeks will be. But as Mercury goes into Scorpio, our minds are going to get a lot more fixated. Our minds are going to get a lot more driven. The problem with that is we might get more fixated on things that we probably shouldn't get fixated on. If there's a situation in your life that might cause some hostility, that might cause some anxiety, it's going to be really easy for you to fixate on the problem and to start to spiral. Because Mercury's in a fixed sign. It's like you're either going down as in like you're getting to the bottom of things, you're getting to the truth, or you're going down into the bottom of things and getting worse and worse and worse. Like no matter what, there's this like tunnel vision getting down into the depths of it. But my challenge for you while Mercury's in Scorpio is to not get into the depths of it by, beating yourself up, worrying about things, creating anxiety. But during this time, when all of this Scorpio stuff is coming up, really focus on deeper truths. What is really going on behind the surface? What is really going on underneath you? Why is there pain? Why is there resentment? Why do you want to have revenge? What are you trying to get out of that? Go in that direction, because when you can start to focus on that and you can start to understand it, you can start to reverse it. You can start to transmute it. You can start to heal it. That's going to be the challenge while Mercury's in Scorpio. All of this happens on Monday. So Monday, we have this full moon in Aries. We are driven. We are going to be way more tenacious. The only issue I would also bring up is that this is a full moon ruled by Mars. Mars is fights and conflict. So this might bring up a lot more tense energy. And with Mercury in Scorpio, it's going to be really easy to be spicy with your words. It's going to be really easy to say those things that will dig under someone's skin. And I just want you to be better than that. I want you to actually, with Mercury in Scorpio, you have to be able to direct truth. You have to be able to confront truth, like bring what's that saying? Bring truth to power or bring truth to light, like saying the thing that is kind of hidden underneath the surface rather than acting out in revenge. And I want to come back to the Mercury and Scorpio, and the good part of it is I want you to focus on the why. Why do you need to change? As you're going down into these deep, dark thoughts, like let's actually start purging some stuff up and fixate on the why. Fixate on the pain in your life. Not to fixate on the pain in the sense of like, oh, my life's hard, but like it's time to transmute some of that stuff, okay? That's a big part of Scorpio. And as your mind gets more fixated on that, things will get dug up, things will get brought up to the surface. That is yours to transmute that in whatever way that you need to do. And with this full moon happening, it's fucking go time on Monday. So let's fucking go. We get to Tuesday, and the first highlight we have on Tuesday is Mercury's making a square to Pluto in Aquarius. Then later on in the day, as the moon is still in Aries, it's going to make a square to Jupiter in Cancer. And then really late in the evening, the moon goes into Taurus. So the thing is with Mercury in Scorpio squaring Pluto in Aquarius is like, number one, I have been a little bit focused on this in terms of, whatever economic, political, there's going to be some sort of like truth that's exposed, or, again, maybe it's more of the, Oracle, Palantir, I just got an email update from Aura Ring. I haven't worn my Aura Ring in a long time, but they're like, oh, we're now selling your, information to Palantir. Great. It's stuff like that. But you can use some of these events happening in the world, if you pay attention to the news, as proxies. Mercury is about communication and information, and Scorpio is like secretive stuff, and it's squaring Pluto. The thing I would bring up is, as you start digging these tunnels in your mind, you might realize something. There might be some information there that makes you go, I didn't know that was what was going on. And I think this is really important because Pluto is about power and fear. And one of the things I'm going to talk about next week when Pluto stations direct is, as Pluto's retrograde, I think it's really easy to be much more fearful versus Pluto being direct feels a little bit more like exerting power. With that being said, Mercury squaring Pluto might be discovering information that makes you spiral a little bit, that creates a lot of fear. And Mercury is in the superior position. If you're part of the aspects course on my Learn Astrology membership, you know all about this. Mercury has the say-so over this, where it's like, we can look at the truth. We can look at some things that are going on behind closed doors or some secrets and freak out, or we could start to actually address the underlying issue. This is not something that you want to duct tape over. This is something to go, okay, if this is my life right now, if these are the circumstances I'm in, how can I take, radical responsibility and accountability? And how can I address the truth of this matter to actually solve this in the way that it needs to be solved? So with Mercury squaring Pluto, there's going to be some friction around communication and power dynamics. I think there might be some information that is exposed or that you learn about that triggers you in a lot of ways. And that's going to be really good, in my opinion, because what it's there for is for you to digest it and to transmute it and to look at it in a more truthful, honest way rather than a laissez-faire, oh, let me give myself a reason to be scared of things. That's not what we want to do anymore. And then on Tuesday, as the moon's in Aries, it's going to make a square to Jupiter in Cancer. The thing is that I brought up is like, you have to let abundance kind of charge you up because the moon's in the superior position, making a square to Jupiter. And I think what's really interesting is the moon is about our emotions and about our body. And it's just coming off of this full moon, right? So when the moon is off of the full moon and it's starting to wane a little bit, it's really hot and dry versus when the moon is building up for a full moon, it's hot and moist, hot and dry, hot and bothered. And it makes a square to Jupiter in Cancer. And I think the one thing would be there might be this draining and exhausting energy to the day, as in like you're doing a lot. There's a, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like after a really heavy workout, you're just kind of like hot and bothered maybe a little bit. And as the moon squares Jupiter, Jupiter's ruled by the moon here. And I want you to take notice of on Tuesday, if you're feeling drained and exhausted, find a way to spark that energy back up. And I think through a lot of that with Jupiter right now is through gratitude, through having that abundant mindset. The thing I put up was let abundance charge you. How can you bring in more? And again, what's also cool is we just got off this Venus South Node in Virgo. Like just because we're done with the Venus South Node conjunction doesn't mean you could still, it doesn't mean you don't have to South Node anymore. It doesn't mean you can't South Node anymore. You could still get rid of stuff. And I think with the moon squaring Jupiter, there's this sense of like, hey, you put a lot of energy and action into something right now. You might need to charge yourself up. This may not be sustainable. So what can you do to bring more of that energy? And I think with Jupiter and Cancer is like feeling safe, feeling like you're taken care of, having gratitude around with the things that you have. That's a really key indicator. Later on Tuesday night, the moon will go into Taurus, and there's going to be this sense of needing to relax. And I think once the moon squares Jupiter, it's like, all right, I could still be grateful, be open to everything that will make me feel a little bit more energized again. But then later on, when the moon goes into Taurus, it's feeling a lot more calm and relaxed. But that brings us to Wednesday. And on Wednesday, around 2 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so if you're on the East Coast, it's going to be about, 5 a.m., the moon will go opposite Mercury. And the thing I wrote about this was like, your mind might be stuck and it may not allow you to like sleep. Because the moon in Taurus is like, oh, I want to relax. This is so nice. But Mercury in Scorpio is like, remember that really cringy thing you said in high school? Everyone hates you about it. You've got to be able to nip that in the butt. Because I think, when you look at oppositions, like they're not necessarily all the way bad, but they do kind of present some interesting information. Like the moon in Taurus wants to relax. It wants your body to feel comfortable, feel safe, feel nourished. And as Mercury, though, where your mind is at is in Scorpio, it's really easy to like dive deep into stuff. And so just really, on Tuesday, really early Wednesday morning, Tuesday night, be careful where your thoughts are going and make sure that your thoughts are directed in the right place. Because with Scorpio, it's like wherever you're thinking, it's going straight into it. So if you're even thinking lightly about something, it's going to go way deeper than you thought. So make sure it's in the right place, directed in the right place. It's going to be so important because otherwise on Tuesday night, you might stay up kind of spiraling. We don't want that. We want to be like Mercury and Scorpio, monk mode, and be able to rest because rest is important. And then on Tuesday, we have another highlight, which is Venus making a sextile to Jupiter. The thing I've been thinking about this is, so Venus is like value and pleasure and like luxury goods. And she's fallen in Virgo, so there's like this not liking thing. She conjoins the South Node, so we got rid of a bunch of stuff. What does it mean for Venus to then aspect Jupiter, where Jupiter is about abundance and about giving stuff? And the thing I wrote down was like, this will do for now. It's like, have you ever needed to get something for maybe your vehicle or your house or your work, and you didn't maybe have like the funds necessary or like the research necessary to buy the right product, so you kind of just buy a filler. That's how I feel like Venus and Virgo sextiling Jupiter and Cancer is like there's some sort of increase, there's some sort of good thing, but it's just good for now. It's not necessarily like, oh my God, you just got this new amazing thing. It's like, it works. It is a filler for when the right thing will come in, if that makes sense. So I do like Venus and Virgo sextiling Jupiter and Cancer. I think it's also good for Venus and Virgo, Jupiter and Cancer stuff. So again, like I think of like cleaning stuff. It's hard for me to not think of cleaning and Virgo and with the zodiac sign of Virgo and Cancer, but I think you get what I mean. I do really like that transit on Wednesday. It is a positive highlight. Too many of you are like, Cameron, you're too negative. You're too negative. I'm actually here to be positive. That requires a little bit of reality. With that being said, on Wednesday, the moon will then go opposite Mars. So what I'm struggling with understanding is, the thing I wrote down was dig your heels in. And the question I posed is being stubborn good? Because if the moon is about feeling things and about our emotions and it's in Taurus where it just wants to feel nourished and good, Mars in Scorpio is opposing it. And there's a part of me where it's like, well, you're going to be stubborn. Like there's no getting out of that. And there will be many of you where your situation where you should be stubborn will be good. As in maybe you need to dig your heels in, you need to set a certain guideline, you will not resist things. But for others, the moon in Taurus is like, I want to relax, I want to feel good. And Mars in Scorpio is like, I just think of David Goggins. Fun story, I'm like fat and smoking right now. Like I'm recording this before the Venus South Node conjunction. I'm about to absolutely purge my life here in about 2 seconds. A couple weeks ago, I was at BJ's, the restaurant. I'm eating a goddamn Pizookie. I'm eating a fucking Pizookie. And who walks in and walks by me? David Goggins. David Goggins sees my fat ass eating a Pizookie. That's David Goggins' experience of me. If you know anything about David Goggins, you watch David Goggins, you're going to go, holy shit. That is the worst thing I could ever experience. Because I live near him. He runs around. And there's this level of the moon in Taurus wanting to relax, and Mars in Scorpio is like David Goggins, be like, stay hard. You need to keep running. You need to go harder. And that tension is going to be really loud on Wednesday of being like, I want to have some sort of semblance of relaxing, but having this pressure, having this fear. And I think the key around this is to listen to that, but without negatively reacting or associating negative emotions with that. Not only how can we create a balance, but more so of like, okay, can I redefine what feeling good means? Can I redefine what value is? So rather than, whether it's sleeping in, doing anything that you may not necessarily, that you kind of associate with relaxing and pleasure, can we redefine that to where it benefits and it feeds what Mars and Scorpio wants out of you, and it also feeds the moon and Taurus part of you? So rather than being like, oh, I'm going to binge TV or doom scroll all day long, even though I know I should be addressing these situations, but what I don't want you to do is go like, okay, well, I've got to do this, and you're reacting out of fear or reacting out of negative emotion. What I want you to do is go, okay, this is information for me to process. I need to be able to relax, because that's just what the moon and Taurus is asking you to do. How can I redefine these Mars and Scorpio things as like relaxing, or as like adjusting myself to be able to do Mars and Scorpio things? What are Mars and Scorpio things? Like addressing truth, being driven, being focused into a more relaxing and pleasurable way, and allowing yourself to have the opportunity to do those things rather than being like, oh, I have to do this, being like, I get to do this. That's the way I want you to look at it. And I think that's going to be a hard thing to address, and there will be some tension, but I think that's the way out of it on Wednesday. We get to Thursday. The moon, while it's in Taurus, is going to make a trine to Venus. Then it's going to sextile Saturn. Then later on in the afternoon, the moon is going to ingress into Gemini, and it's going to conjoin Uranus, trine Pluto, and sextile Neptune. The moon being in Taurus, trining Venus and Virgo, I think is, again, moon is being ruled by Venus, pleasure, relaxing. It's trining Venus and Virgo. Being better about, again, Venus is still in Virgo, so pleasure, fun, value. She's still a little bit not enjoying things, but I think the moon in Taurus can then again differentiate what is enjoyable, remember? And the thing I wrote down after is as the moon makes that sextile to Saturn and Pisces, it's like enjoying putting things together. We have that addressing of like, how do I redefine what is actually pleasurable and relaxing? And I think that pours itself into Thursday. Then the moon goes into Gemini, super curious and, God, what's the word I wrote here? Oh, energy burst. So I think as the moon goes into Gemini, it's like, whoa, I'm looking at this, I'm seeing that. All of this information and ideas, and maybe that's too much caffeine, but just understand that will happen, and it's your choice to understand where you let your mind lead to. Because as the moon's in Gemini, we have all these curious thoughts. Mercury's in Scorpio, where it's like, it's kind of like, do you remember being a kid and, there's always those scenes in movies where it's like parents block their eyes, or like if there's something happening in public that you don't want to look at, but you can't stop looking at it. That's Mercury and Scorpio. So as the moon's in Gemini and you're all curious, be careful about what information you process or where your thoughts go, because you're going to look straight at it. Then we get into Friday, and really not much is happening on Friday. It's just the moon hanging out in Gemini. It will be essentially applying to a trine to the sun, but that doesn't happen until Saturday. But the thing I talk about on Friday is, or the thing that I wrote down on Friday is, there's a lot of chatter and there's not a lot of movement, if that makes sense. It's more of a day for information to come and go. It's more of a day to research this, look into that. But again, I want you to be very aware this week of where your mind is going. Is it getting fixated on things that you don't want to be fixated on? And if you are getting fixated on those bad things, well, that's important information. How do we transmute that? How do we uncover those truths? How do we get a little bit deeper into it to where we can actually make some positive changes in our life rather than just focusing on things that we don't want to look at? So then we get to Saturday. The moon will make a trine to the sun in Libra. Cool. We have our first highlight of the day, which is Venus going opposite Saturn. Then the moon later on after that is going to make a square to Saturn, and then it's going to square Venus pretty much within the same hour. So there's this little T square between the moon and Gemini, Venus and Virgo, Saturn and Pisces, as Venus and Saturn are opposite one another. And the other highlight I wrote is the sun is at its fallen degree on this day. Saturday is a challenging day. Not that it's like this super hard day, but it's like a self discipline challenge day. So as the moon shines the sun, there's a lot of conversation that creates like energy where there is none. So connecting with people, talking with people, there's some energy that I think will kind of uplift you. But let's talk about Venus opposite Saturn. The thing I wrote down was, you need to know when to stop, and are you actually open to things? As the moon squares both of those things, the moon in Gemini squaring Saturn and Venus, the thing I wrote down is don't overthink it. With the sun being fallen on Saturday, your willpower is not going to work. It is the worst degree for the sun to be in. And that, not that it's bad, it's that the sun is not doing its job all that well, which is like willpower, vitality, energy. It is like, it's not there. With Venus and Virgo wanting to, like, again, I use the analogy as like, you're plucking your eyebrows too much. And Venus going opposite Saturn is like, hey, stop. Parker, throw up an image of a woman in the early 2000s with two plucked of eyebrows. That's going to be you. We don't want that. With Venus and Virgo going opposite Saturn, Saturn is saying, you need to stop and you need to know when to stop. The issue is Venus is in Virgo. It's trying to think, it's trying to rationalize, and Saturn is creating limitations around being open to things. Now with the moon in Gemini squaring both of these things, the moon in Gemini is like, well, what about this? What about that? I think you're going to have some information overload. And this is why I wrote down, like, are you actually open? Can you actually surrender? Or are you going to overthink it? Because I don't overthink Saturday. You're going to be like pressure to do this, pressure to do that. Don't do that. Be open, know when to stop, and realize while Venus is in Virgo, is not everything's going to be perfect. But with Saturn and Pisces, you kind of just have to trust the process. It's really hard. And this is the thing I haven't really picked up on this. I kind of picked up in 2024, but now that Saturn's back in Pisces, I'm really like, man, there is just this like closed off door to the Pisces stuff, to the openness, to the forgiveness. And that's something that I'm really applying in my life right now of like, I am not being open to all of the opportunities. And I really need to dissolve and decalcify whatever walls or barriers I have in my life around that, because I can't do that anymore. And I think on Saturday, that challenge really presents itself. And again, the question I ask for you is, are you open to more? And can you surrender into that? And can you not resist it? Can you not force things to change? And can you just surrender and be open? That brings us to Sunday. On Sunday, the moon will then ingress into Cancer and square Neptune. And then the moon later on in the evening will make a trine to Mercury and Mars. So as the moon goes into Cancer and squares Neptune, the thing I wrote down was focus on taking care of yourself for energy. What's really interesting is I kind of went really deep into this in the rising sign horoscopes on the membership. Like, now that Saturn's not in Aries, there's way less pressure on whatever house Aries rules for you. But as Neptune's there, Neptune's retrograde, there's this like deception and feeling really confused about how to do this Aries thing. And I look at the moon in Cancer being like, I want to take care of myself, bath, bathe, self-care, moon in Cancer stuff, right? But as it squares Neptune, there's this kind of like, hey, what are you doing that's actually going to increase energy and drive? And there might be this situation on Sunday where taking care of yourself gets distorted on what that means because of Neptune in Aries. And I would allow yourself to just have that moment and let it happen, move through it. Because I think that's information that will become more important next week. Because I'm really looking at Venus going into Libra next week and going opposite Neptune is like kind of a big deal. And I'll explain why, of course, next week. I did in the rising sign horoscopes, but like long story short, I think it just relieves a lot of the pressure in like this really calm and chill way. So Moon goes into Cancer, squares Neptune, but then later on in the evening, the Moon is making a trine to both Mercury and Mars. And the thing I wrote down was necessity facilitates a direct emotional drive. So as the Moon's in Cancer, and we're getting into this waning Moon in Cancer, by the way, the Moon in Cancer is like, what do I need to take care of? What's going to make me feel safe and secure? Then it's trining Mercury and Mars, where Mercury, Mars, and Scorpio is like, what if like focusing on the thing that needs to change in your life, focusing on the bad and understanding what needs to be done with it. What if safety and security is in those changes? What if safety and security is actually like looking at the things that need to change in your life and addressing them? That's what this is. So I think as we get into Sunday evening, there is a lot more like, all right, I got to focus on this. I got to focus on that. What emoji? Let's do there's an emoji with like a slot machine emoji. Give me a slot machine emoji if you made it this far. With that being said, join us for the live on Sunday, October 26th. If you want to be able to read your chart and pretty much master all of the ancient timing techniques and be able to actually use astrology to start planning your life, join us on Sunday, October 26th. When you sign up, you'll immediately get the 6-hour workshop. And then on Sunday, we'll be able to, Sunday, October 26th. Let me say that. I'll be answering all of your questions, going through all of your guys' charts, answering any questions you guys have, and showing you how to put this all together. Again, the workshop actually shows you how to put it all together, but actually showing you individually how to put it all together in your chart so you can start planning for the next few years, but more importantly, planning for 2026 and how you can conquer it and make it your year. With that being said, next week we have Venus going into Libra. We have Venus making a trine to Uranus, trine to Pluto, going opposite Neptune. Those are our big highlights. The Sun will square Mars. And then at the end of next week, we do have Mercury conjoining Mars in Scorpio, which is more of this. It's a little bit of a problem, but it's a problem on top of a really good thing. So we'll talk about that next week. With that being said, I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next week.